On today's show, it's a break from the sadness and we get into a little bit more happiness talking about Blake Snell's Cy Young. 99.9% sure it's going to be his to win Cy Young season. But it's not just me. I'm joined by Colby Olson of Just Baseball talking about his analysis of Blake Snell. And because he has to, he's got to flex a little bit about being right about Ha-Seong Kim. All that and more, guys. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only podcast that may be better than the Padres themselves. Everybody, it is Wednesday, September 27th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes occasionally, but I promise you not always the most, Javier Reyes. Follow me on Twitter at Javapeno, Javiiipeno, or at LO_Padres for the Twitter account for the show. If you don't like my tweets, that's totally fine. I get it. I'm a bit of an idiot. And also Locked On Padres on YouTube if you like your podcast on video and you like to see my head, my shirts, my Pac-Man and Tatis, whatever, or if you like to see two people and one of them who's much closer to his camera than I am, quite frankly, but looking as handsome as ever, it is my good friend, Colby Olson of Just Baseball, statistic wizard, Swolby Olson is what I often call him. But before we get into his latest deep dive into Blake Snell, I want to just ask, how are you doing, sir?
Doing well, man. I'm doing real well. I've taken my focus off of the Red Sox for the past few weeks and have had the opportunity to look at some other stats. But yeah, so I was going through just having one of my random days where I'm scrolling Fangraphs, just like clicking on different leaderboards, and I clicked on the walk percentage leaderboard, or maybe it was just plain old walks, and I saw Blake Snell at the top of the list. I was like, wow, he's at the top of that list, and he has the best ERA in baseball. So I went to walk percentage or walk rate and 13.5%. I don't know what it's at right now. I think it's around there. And I was like, wow, 13.5%. That's the highest this year, but I feel like that might be the highest in a long time. So I looked, and that is the highest walk rate of any starting pitcher since 2000. I mean, it's just incredible how many guys he walks. But my article that I wrote on justbaseball.com, the title of it being Blake Snell's wild ride to the NL Cy Young Award.
Yeah,
it really has been a wild ride. He's doing something this year that really has never been done before, or at least to an extreme that's never been done before. So we'll dive into it, but it really is incredible what he's doing, and credit to Blake Snell for really like changing the game a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, obviously you're very good at diving deep into the numbers and stuff, and just in general baseball analysis for in whatever form it takes. But like, I read your article when it came out the other day, and I knew about the walk rate. I've been talking about it on my show because I cover them every day, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of insane how much. But it's interesting that I think there's two reasons that's interesting that Blake Snell is probably the Cy Young winner. Number one being just the kind of, and this isn't a new thing, but just that we've really gotten away from the wins and the team success thing that used to be, I think, a lot more concentrated for the Cy Young. I know Felix Hernandez was kind of like the most famous one, but Snell being on as bad of a team as the Padres and that basically being completely out of the equation, that's one thing that makes it interesting. And I mostly agree with that. I'm like 95% on board with ignoring the win-loss when it comes to Cy Young, even though if it's like really close, sometimes I'm like, what team was more fun? Who were people actually watching? But the second part being, it's like a unique season. And you tested that with the walk rate, the fact that it's the highest since 2000. So it makes you wonder, like, wow, like that's kind of most years. It's like, all right, let me guess, low walk rate. You got your super high strikeout rate. You didn't give up runs. This guy is walking everybody under the sun and has plenty of people that he leaves on base. But it seems like he minimizes it because he's one of the most elite, if not the premier strikeout pitcher in the league. And it's just pretty fascinating because usually, if you look at field independent pitching, with FIP and all that stuff, you just don't get stuff like this. Like eventually hitters are going to do well, but every time he's like dare I say, the most clutch performer on this very unclutch Padres team. this year, is that he's able to not break down if he gives up a couple walks to start the season or start the inning, and he strikes everybody out. But Colby, like, what do you think is kind of to give me some more cold hard facts instead of my generalizing about Blake Snell's season?
Yeah, I think let's start with how rare it is for somebody to walk the most batters in baseball, but also succeed at such a high level ERA wise. So if we go back and we take the 50 best starting pitching seasons by ERA since 2015, the average walk rate in those seasons was 6%. But even further than that, Javi, there's only 3 examples since 2015 of pitchers having an ERA under 2.7 and a walk rate above 8%. Blake Snell is the owner of 2 of those. In 2019,
Wow.
he did it. I think he had an 11% walk rate back in 2019 when he won the Cy Young. Dylan Cease did it last year in 2022. I think he was around 10.5%. And then you have Blake Snell in 2023, who has a 2.25 ERA and a walk rate that is the highest we've seen in a long, long time. But the other interesting thing is, Javi, the highest walk rate seasons back to 2000. In the top 10, there were actually a lot of good seasons in there. Al Leiter had a season in there. Daisuke Matsuzaka had a season in there. I think maybe even Kershaw had a season in there. I need to go back and look, but there were some good seasons in there, which I was surprised about. But it comes down to strikeouts, as you mentioned. And Blake Snell, there's been a lot of talk about Blake Snell versus Spencer Strider and how lucky Blake Snell's gotten because he's left batters on base at a rate we haven't really seen ever, like a top 5 rate since 1912. Like, as long as baseball has existed, Blake Snell is leaving batters on base at one of the highest levels ever. And that is lucky. Like, there is definitely a luck factor to that. But I think it's also a skill factor because he's throwing the least pitches in the zone of any pitcher since 2010. 32.5% of his pitches right now are in the strike zone. So 2/3 of his pitches are out of the zone. And it's not like he's getting batters to swing that much outside the zone, but he's doing it enough where it's sustainable, where they're still swinging enough and whiffing out of the zone that he's able to be successful. And with a subpar fastball at that. But those 3 secondaries are huge. And I also talk about how he increased the changeup usage this year.
Yeah, and that's been a big thing for me is that usually, and I wasn't one of those people complaining about Snell before any people get in my mentions, but early on in the season, the trend for Blake Snell with his Padres tenure has been he starts off really slow and then he heats up. And usually what happens is he mostly abandoned his curveball and changeup. And he went to his fastball slider combination. That's what happened. I remember you wrote about a couple years ago when you ranked him like 16, 17 among starting pitchers in baseball, something around that mark. And your big thing was once he went back to fastball slider, he kind of was just striking out guys. Even that bad first season with the Padres, he was just lights out at the end. Last year, more so throughout the year. But then this year, early on, he started doing that. He started off slow, and then I saw him pivot to fastball slider, and he still wasn't very good. So that made me a little bit worried that it was like, oh, maybe it's not working for once. But then almost somewhat miraculously, and what's so fun about baseball is this is why you can't outright predict things, is that he then developed his changeup and curveball. And the amount of times that I've seen, especially the curve, drop from like Mount Everest and go into where the underminer is hanging out, like just hit the dirt and it practically bounces to the plate, but guys swing at it. So it's just this very like fascinating season where he's just not he just gets everybody to chase seemingly. Like he's going to make you make mistakes, and he has really good put away stuff, I think, for sure. So I very much have enjoyed it. And I know that, watching him, while granted for a lackluster Padres team, it's got a little bit to waste, I think is the way to some people will describe it, but he has been really incredible. And I don't know, man, like, what other kind of like weird Cy Young seasons were like this? I mean, because I remember when he started being dominant, I remember, granted, this is a little lazy on my part, but I remember Jake Arrieta's second half when that got him the Cy Young. But how does he compare when it comes to the hot stretch? Maybe if you take out some of his best starts, how does he compare to some other pitchers that we've seen? But actually, before you answer that, really quickly, guys, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors today, and that is Nutrafol. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Look, here's the thing. You don't have to choose between better hair, growth, and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair. No drugs, no compromises, just better hair. And it's important. You want to have my magnificent hair that sometimes gets a little bit crazy? Well, Nutrafol can help you out and make sure that you're at least healthy in that regard. Did you know 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? That means it's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of thinning with Nutrafol. It's the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. It's really good stuff, guys. So go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz, which is really kind of like cute. I really like that. Identify causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. Supports hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole body health. And guys, as always, you know me, I got you covered with some cool little codes and whatnot. Take the first step. Go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get $10 off your first month subscription. So again, find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol by going to Nutrafol, Nutrafol.com/men and enter promo code LOCKEDONMLB. And just like that, we're back, everybody, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Remember to go check out SiriusXM for your hometown broadcast, play-by-play stuff if you want the old radio coverage of the Padres. Granted, I literally yesterday demanded everyone stop watching the Padres. But still, if you like the radio stuff, go check that out. But had a little bit of a sharp stop there. My apologies. But what I was saying before was, when it comes to a dominant stretch, maybe taking out the beginning, it's something like, basically it feels like since May, this guy has been unhittable. How does he stack up, Colby, to some of the other great streaks of hotness we've seen, like the aforementioned Arrieta?
He stacks up, Javi. So Blake Snell owns a 1.2 ERA across his last 23 starts. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's pretty good.
And it's so ridiculous, in fact, that it's the best 23 start stretch by ERA since Bob Gibson in 1968. And in 1968, Bob Gibson was an alien. 304 innings pitched.
100 years ago? What's going on here? Bob Gibson? He's pretty good last time I checked.
Incredibly, at a 1.12 ERA that season, 304 innings pitched, 34 starts, and he went complete game in 28 of them. I mean, just ridiculous. But Blake Snell, a 1.2 ERA across his last 23 starts. Arrieta right behind him, 1.21 across 23 starts in that 2015 season. Now, I do want to bring up a fun Arrieta stat, because I was looking into this morning when I did see Blake Snell. I was like, wow, 1.2 ERA, that's got to be up there with Arrieta. So if you back that up a little bit, Jake Arrieta had a 0.86 ERA across 20 starts in 2015. Now that is the second lowest across 20 starts since 1947. Again, behind Bob Gibson, like cheat code that year. But Jake Arrieta also had an 8.69 ERA across 20 starts in 2021. That is the highest ERA across 20 consecutive starts since 1947. So not only did Jake Arrieta have basically the most dominant 20-start stretch in the last 50 years, he also had the worst 20-start stretch in the last 50 years. And it was also as a member of the San Diego Padres.
That's also as a member of the Padres. It's like we're the one time, a bad signing that we apparently paid for it as a blood sacrifice in order to get this Blake Snell season. Yeah, I mean, we could say for another time on, that has have to do with the Padres, just complete lack of ability to bring in anyone that gets better. But that's crazy to be compared to someone like that. And don't get me wrong, I know we do that all the time in sports. We go, wow, guy shoots from far away. He's Steph Curry. Wow, guy has a cannon arm. He's Patrick Mahomes. Wow, guy has a good stretch of striking out guys. He's Bob Gibson. But in this case, I think that it's a large enough sample size. And it's pretty nuts that this is going to be Blake Snell's second Cy Young. It just doesn't feel like people, I know they know that. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel, I think a big part of it is because he's historically, for the most, and it hasn't been as much this season. This season he's been fine in that regard, but an inefficient pitcher, I think, is one of the things. And I think some people remember, maybe they remember a little bit of the World Series game, but they also remember like 2020 when the Rays were like, cool, we're gonna throw you out for 2 innings sometimes. Like, it was really weird, but it just seems like he's mastered, like he's achieved his final form. What do you think? We talked about kind of his changes, I think, this year. What do you think have been some bigger changes to Blake Snell this year, like with his pitching repertoire and whatnot, that made him so successful?
Before we talk about that, though, I do want to talk about his legacy, because I think you were starting to get into that. And I think his legacy is the end of my article, but I think it's very interesting because he had a 1.89 ERA, won the Cy Young back in 2018. What an incredible season that was, right? And then a 4.29 ERA in 2019. And then a 4.2 ERA in his first year in San Diego, a better last year, 3.38 ERA, but not dominant by any stretch. And then this year, dominance again. He's going to win his second Cy Young. There's only been 22 pitchers that have won multiple Cy Young awards, and pitchers with exactly 2 Cy Young awards. I mean, it's an incredible list. Corey Kluber, Tim Lincecum, Jacob deGrom, Johan Santana, Roy Halladay, Tom Glavine, Bob Gibson, as we mentioned earlier, Gaylord Perry, and 2 that I don't really know who they are, Brett Saberhagen and Denny McLain. But just an incredible list. And I think Blake Snell is going to be that guy in like 30 years where your kids are going to come up to you and they're going to be watching a broadcast. They're going to have a Blake Snell stat. They're like, Dad, who the heck is Blake Snell? And your mind's going to blow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he's probably not going to make the Hall of Fame, but he is going to be remembered as, you know, a really amazing pitcher for 2 seasons. That's all it takes. All you need is 2 incredible seasons to be remembered forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially like with a name like Snell, people are gonna be like, what the heck is that? So people are gonna be like weirded out. I think that's a great point. And, you know, not to, you almost made it sound like, you know, the LeBron question when it comes to legacy, arguably one of the most overused words we have in this industry. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just pretty incredible this season that he's had. It stinks that it's going to waste. In terms of just this team, not for him, but he is about to get paid. So I think he's totally fine with that. But man, just really, really crazy. Do you think, though, just one last question, because I might as well bring it up. I think by all accounts, you know, reports have come out. I talked about this on yesterday's show, that the Padres are going to be cutting back on spending. So I'm going to make the leap here and say that they are not re-signing him. How would you feel? Do you think that Blake Snell is a guy that you should absolutely be going for? Do you think people should be wary of how, you know, he walks so many batters, his overall inefficiency with not going long into outings and stuff like that? Not this year, but previous years. Do you think he's a free agent that you're a little bit scared of, or are you ready, you know, your Red Sox, to just break the bank, say, screw it, this guy is money, and we want to go for it?
You know, Javi, I really hate that people characterize Blake Snell as a guy that doesn't go deep into ball games, because I don't think that's necessarily accurate. Yeah, he has 9 outs in the 7th inning and beyond this year. But that, you know, in today's baseball, you really just need a guy that can average 5.5 innings. And he's done that. He doesn't go 4 innings. He goes 6. Like, consistently, it's 6 innings. That's what he's getting you every time out there. And I think that is incredibly valuable, especially as a Red Sox fan this season. The Red Sox have failed to have a starting pitcher go 5 innings or more in like 70% of starts. And it's just so frustrating to watch. If I know a guy is going to go out there for 6 innings and not give up more than 1 or 2 runs, I mean, incredibly valuable. And I don't think that is testament to him not going deep into baseball games, because I think he is in today's game. Like 6 innings is what you need.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. I think personally, I think that comes from just the 2020 season. I think that's where I'm looking at it now. To start off the season, he went 2 innings, 3 innings, 3 innings, 5 for the whole season. He didn't go 6. I feel like that's where it started. And then he had a little bit of moments with the Padres, but all in all, he's mostly just been, and I know this isn't the best stat in the world, but a quality start guy for the most part. Even if, and by the way, like you said, even if he goes 5, the times that he has gone 5 this year, he's striking out like 9 guys and not giving up any runs. So you're wondering, like, well, then just have a bullpen that isn't atrocious and you'd be fine. There is still value, I think, to having guys that go 6 all the time and 7 to a degree. But
who's doing that?
Yeah, exactly.
Point
Who's
me
doing
in the
that?
direction of those starting pitchers?
Exactly. Who is doing that?
Doing that?
And also, if he's so unbelievable over the 5, then, like, figure it out. You know what I'm saying? So,
Exactly, man. Exactly.
Snell has been pretty money. I really do think that it originates from that 2020 season, people being mad that they, like, drafted him in fantasy baseball. And they were like, what? Why is my number 1 pitcher going 2 innings? I think that's where the narrative started. Similar to the narrative about Manny Machado not hustling, which is based off of something that happened 4 or 5 years ago. So, Colby, though,
But
before
in terms of contract, though, Javi, you were asking about that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, go ahead.
That's interesting because I need to think about it. He's been so inconsistent for much of his career, and his approach is unconventional. It has been this year, right? He's throwing no pitches inside the strike zone, but batters are only making contact with 46.9% of pitches outside the strike zone when they swing this year. So like it's effective. So I think it is sustainable to a degree, but you have to imagine that things are going to regress in the left on base percentage department, in the BABIP department. Yeah, he's not giving up a lot of hard contact, and I don't think it's going to be like, it's not like he's going to go from having a 2.25 ERA to all of a sudden he has a 4.3 ERA. I just don't know if he can do this again. But in terms of what I'd give him, I mean, like, would I lay down
Robbie Ray got paid, right? So
3 for 75, like 4 for 90. I don't know. I feel like that's probably in the like ballpark.
I think he gets around what Robbie Ray got. This it feels very similar in the sense of like,
is that 5 for 100?
Yeah, 5 for 100, something like that. And Ray was a guy who had been coming off some weird seasons. Another guy who walks a lot of people, and that scared people. And he used to be one of my favorite pitchers to watch because of how many batters he walked. I thought it was super entertaining. But then super strikeout stuff, Seattle signs him. I could see him getting around that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's like the barometer, that they use in negotiations, to be honest with you. So really curious to see how that goes. Go ahead.
Final point is what I think will make him sustainable long-term too is that changeup usage, right? He increased that changeup usage from 5% last year to 18% this year. That pitch was incredible for him. 47% whiff rate, a 198 average against. And what that pitch allows him to do is finally pitch to right-handed hitters who have not dominated him, but have fared well against him in the past. This year, he held righties to a 568 OPS. That's a career low for him. So that the changeup usage being increased is huge for him, and I think that's big for his sustainability long term.
Absolutely, love it. Sizilla, love to see it. But Colb, we're not done. Oh, we're not done yet. We have to get into letting Colby cook, talking about Xander Bogaerts versus Ha-Seong Kim to close out the show as a little treat. But before we do that, guys, really quickly, want to give a shout out to the homies over at Jace Medical. Look, here's the thing. It gets hard out here, folks, to, take care of yourself, to have the right antibiotics, the right meds, the right supplements. Well, the Jace case provides 5 of those life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get one of them Jace cases is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their, not ours, not Locked On, Jace, board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor-created, doctor recommended. And again, like, there's supply shortages that's out there. We had the pandemic for so many years, so it can be a little bit difficult, and you want to make sure that you're covered. You can receive stuff like basically the same day. It's really great. It's simple. Again, go fill out that form and get a prescription and life-saving medications right to your door. And as always, of course, you're listening to my podcast. I got y'all covered. You can get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using my code, you guessed it, Locked On, at checkout on jacemedical.com. That is Jace, Jase, medical.com.
Man, you got the big pharma ads now. Love it.
Yeah, man. Big pharma ads. That's right. And you guys hear that? That means we are back here. Also, remember, once again, go check out SiriusXM for the play-by-play broadcast of the Padres. But now we're going to let Colby cook a little bit. And I might cook back just a little bit because Colby, look, I've let his alter ego stat be Olson. You've seen that today. All right. You saw him bring out the stats with Blake Snell, but now his other alter ego, Swolby, which is the version of him that flexes when he gets something really, really right. Not that you were wrong about Blake Snell or anything like that. It's just that wasn't your brand. One of your things that I believe we talked about before the season, I believe it was either before this season or last season, was your affinity for Ha-Seong Kim. And it wasn't just based on vibes, although if it was just based on vibes, I'd fully approve it. You were very bullish on Ha-Seong Kim having a better season than Xander Bogaerts, at least when it comes to F4. And that seems to have happened. So Colby,
Yeah, it's
give your
close.
thoughts as a Red Sox fan losing Xander Bogaerts. I'll let you cook for a little bit, uninterrupted. Go for it.
This was one of my hotter takes coming into the season, was that Ha-Seong Kim would finish the season with a higher F4 than Xander Bogaerts this year, which was both. I thought that Xander Bogaerts would struggle in his move over to San Diego. He's been playing through this wrist injury for the last 2 seasons now. The power output has definitely, taken a dive. But I also thought Ha-Seong Kim, who had a 106 WRC plus last year, but was one of the best defenders in baseball, could take a little bit of a step forward at the plate, which he has done this year. He has a 115 WRC plus on the season, a 4.4 F4. Xander Bogaerts is at 4.3 F4. So he has been hot as ever, Javi. And I know you're going to want to talk about that, because in the second half, Xander Bogaerts has been amazing. And I do wonder if finally, if really finally his wrist has been healthy, because in the second half, a 139 WRC plus, he's hitting 319. His strikeout rate is the lowest it's been in a long, long time, 13.4%, a 183 ISO. He hasn't hit that since 2019, 2018. Like his ISO just has kept dropping and dropping and dropping. So I do wonder if Xander Bogaerts finally has overcome these wrist issues that have just been lingering forever, but he's not hitting the ball necessarily harder in the second half. So I don't know. Xander Bogaerts has been, in my opinion, one of the weirdest hitters to watch. And this is coming from a Red Sox fan. I've hated watching him hit for years because I never understood it. I was like, how do his hands work like that? I just don't understand it. But
I would disagree with the verbiage of hated. I was in the group chat when y'all had that playoff run. That's all I'm saying, man. I was in that chat. You and our other buddies, our friends Ben and Cam. I was in that group chat, so I wouldn't use the verbiage of hated, but I think it's fascinating. I'm a huge proponent of Xander Bogaerts bouncing back next year. I think that he was very consistent. I just think he knows what he's doing. I know he doesn't hit the ball hard. He does have that weird, like, just a really great swing, and then it's like this blooper, right? Like there is a weird disconnect that he does have that does cause some concern, and the wrist injury, which I think it is a coincidence that after he had gotten hit on his wrist by a pitch, I believe it was in the second month of the season, that's when the decline started. Don't get me wrong. I know he's dealt with it before, but I don't think that was a coincidence. The second thing is this isn't the first shortstop that has struggled after signing a major deal, especially as of late. And especially this is a guy who's in the American League for so long. And I wonder, does that have to do with it? On top of moving to a new team, on top of a new contract, it's also a different league. I don't necessarily have the numbers to back that up, but that's a vibe there. And in general this year, I think the slash line's not that bad. I think the WRC plus is not that bad. The big thing is he was atrocious, like the rest of the Padres, and like will be discussed all offseason, with runners in scoring position in high leverage situations. Xander Bogaerts. Colby, do you know what he's hitting this year with men on first and second?
Oh man, it's gotta be like 125 or something, Javi.
It's I'm trying to pull it up because I've pulled it up so many times that it's practically bookmarked. My computer is just loading. But with runners on first and second this year, I got it. Don't worry. With runners on first and second this year, he is hitting 93.
093?
093.
Jeez.
Do you know what he's hitting with runners on first and third?
Just do all like runners on base. I mean, God.
I know, but I just want to do each one just to show you how miserable
First and third. Oh my God. I don't know. Just tell me.
167. And then lastly, with the bases loaded, the best possible situation outside bases loaded with a 3-0 count that a batter could be in, he is hitting, check this, 71. So that combined with everything that I mentioned, that's just so bad that I believe in a positive regression to the mean. If he hits 220 with bases loaded, if he
Yeah.
hits 200 with men on base, that makes him a little bit better, and I think increases that F4 overall and makes the season not feel as nightmarish, because that's just so poor. The Padres have been so bad with runners in scoring position this year, and he's a big part of it.
I mean, to be honest, this is kind of where I would expect Xander Bogaerts to land for this contract, like 283, 350, 442 slash. Like that's an 800 OPS. That's kind of where I see him going forward, to be honest. So I don't think the problem this year. I know that runners in scoring position was a problem with this entire team. Javi, if I had to point the finger, and people listening to the show are not going to like this, but if I had to point the finger to one person's performance this year on why the Padres are not in a better position right now, it's Fernando Tatis Jr. for me. You
really
can't Tatis Jr. and have a 118 WRC plus. You can't be hitting 264. Like, I know how good he's been defensively, and that just one of the best defenders out and right this year. But a 118 WRC plus for Fernando Tatis to me is unacceptable. Like, if he's at a 140 WRC plus, if he's 20% better at the plate this year, I think they get 3 or 4 more wins and really do have a shot at making sneaking into the playoffs. But if I told you at the beginning of the year Fernando Tatis Jr. has a 118 WRC plus this year, you would not be happy. And we really haven't heard much about that.
I wouldn't have been happy, but I wasn't as surprised. We haven't heard much about it. I will say that a lot of Padres Twitter got way too bullish on Tatis for this year. And there was a great article at Fangraphs that I cite a lot about basically saying, coming off of, this is why I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback on that. Coming off of shoulder surgeries that Tatis had, coming off shoulder surgery, coming off the embarrassment of a suspension, quite frankly, and how much that blew up, it was reasonable to expect a regression. Now, 118, I would have liked a little bit more, but I had predicted preseason that it was going to be around 128. Which would have been much better. But also, the reason that I want to push back on it is, number one, the defense, which you did allude to, but also not as nearly porous with runners on base. And I do think that shows you that he wasn't affected by all the dysfunction nearly as much, which I think is a good sign. If we're talking with runners in scoring position this year, 295, 364, 443 slash line, I'll take it. That's pretty great, all things considered. So he was able to not become Isaiah Kiner-Falefa with runners in scoring position, the way that Bogaerts, Manny Machado, Trent Grisham, Jake Cronenworth, and company all were this year. But it's true. I think that I just think that he played good enough, and it is disappointing, but with the shoulder, hard for me to put the blame entirely on him rather than the other guys who just, I mean, man, could you at least could you hit a sac fly? I mean, come on, guys, what are we doing here? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, the other thing with Tatis is, yes, coming off shoulder surgery, you need that context, but also he's been a little bit unlucky this year, and similar way to Vlad Jr., right? They both have Vlad Jr., 119 WRC plus, Tatis, 118 WRC plus. They both have the same xWOBA, though. 375 xWOBA for Tatis, 377 xWOBA for Vladdy, and they both have a big difference between those. So there's definitely been some luck factored, but also I think Tatis, coming off of shoulder surgery, has also been not able to hit the ball in the air as much. 46% ground ball rate this year versus a 40% ground ball rate last year. So I would expect 2024 to be a big year for Tatis. But you got to talk about what happened, right? And a 118 WRC plus is what happened. And if that was higher, I think that it might have been a little bit of a different story for the Padres this year. But,
Agreed.
You also have guys like Josh Hader in the clubhouse not wanting to pitch in big situations. So, I mean, who knows?
That I think is my biggest thing, is just I would not put it on Tatis with all the expectations and everything with the injuries and whatnot. And even still, it's kind of incredible that this is a nearly 30-30 guy who still was able to provide a good defense even in a down year. So if anything, I think it gives you excitement, right? He's still good.
Otherwise, I'm just saying, I think the Padres really needed him to be 7.3 F4.
I think they needed him, but they shouldn't have needed him, if that makes sense. I think that these other guys should have been a lot better. But that being said, hey, Ha-Seong Kim we almost conversation got hijacked a little bit by ourselves. But Ha-Seong Kim, just like, I wasn't down on him. I just thought that we were going to get the same good player he was last year, which is a defensive beast who could play all across the diamond and upgraded to the level where he is an above average offensive player. I did not know that he was going to be what he was this year, which is jump from like a 105, 106 WRC plus guy to like 128 at points, and a guy who hit for a lot more power, a guy who's just been there for them and also really good in the clutch. Do you think there's anything about Ha-Seong Kim that made you especially excited that you saw this year?
I mean, yeah, the power finally coming through a little bit. I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like he's kind of just been himself. But 17 bombs is amazing to see. He's running more this year. He only stole 12 bases last year, 36 bases this year. But you got to remember, Ha-Seong Kim hit 30 home runs in the KBO in 2020.
Yeah.
So he has some juice in there. It should not be forgotten. But really, really just if there was like a player, I think Ha-Seong Kim is one of those underrated players to give the answer to, like, if you could choose one player to build your team around kind of thing, but they can't be a superstar. Like Ha-Seong Kim is like that. He's like Tommy Edman.
He fits everywhere. He fits everywhere.
Maybe a little bit better than Tommy Edman, you know?
Every player will want him. He has that like tag that like the boomer generation or like your parents will use, which is like he's a winning player. He has that vibe to him, which I like a lot. But yeah, Kim, the only bad thing with Kim, did have a bad last month. In 17 games in September, 174, 269, 203 slash line. So he did have a bad month, but aside from that, he also had 4 amazing ones. So I'm not freaking out, but it's one of those splendid developments for the Padres. And frankly, something I should look to going forward. Wow, you gave a guy a little bit of time. Who would have thunk it? And I'm still mad that they started CJ Abrams. I did not see why they needed to do that last year when you had Ha-Seong Kim, and looks like we were both proven right. But Kim, better year than Bogaerts for sure. Yes, the F4 is a little bit close, but especially I think when you take into account that he was not nearly as bad with runners on scoring position. Really awesome stuff. One of the few good developments for the Padres, along with Blake Snell. But Colby, this has been a blast. Always love talking to you on the show. Any last things you would like to plug or say to the good people out there?
No, nothing really to plug. I mean, just check out Just Baseball. Check out my article. Blake Snell,
in the show notes.
Wild Ride to the NL Cy Young Award. Go check that out. But no, nothing else to plug, Javier. I just really appreciate you having me on and giving me a place to talk about this, because it really is such a special season for Blake Snell, and I really want everybody to realize like how rare this is, that what he's doing has really not been done to the degree that it's being done by him this year. And I hope that Blake Snell starts have given Padres fans at least some reason to watch Padres baseball down the stretch, because I've definitely enjoyed watching him pitch, because it's just fun seeing him walk 2 batters and then making the next 2 guys look silly on curveballs and then getting some guy to ground out like a week later. It's awesome.
Agreed 100%. With that all said, everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Heck, certainly better than this year, my God. But everybody, go check out Just Baseball, like Colby said. Follow him on Twitter at Colby_Olson3. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, at LO_Padres, Locked On Padres on YouTube. Stay tuned tomorrow for my podcast with Millard Thomas, where we're going to be drafting regression candidates for next year. And I don't know what I'm doing Friday, but it'll be something. Maybe when they're officially eliminated, we'll have a funeral, a Viking funeral for the team. But until next time, everybody, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. For our faithful hobies, take care.